What's going on there, fellas? I didn't think I would be making a video today because usually people are a little bit less interested in this particular workout, which is funny because it's the one workout every week where I have to bring my camera to time my yoke runs. Apologies for the audio, apology for the bit of a fisheye. I know it looks a little bit funny, but the GoPro is wicked helpful because I can set the camera a lot closer to the yoke and still get the whole run in frame, so I can then hand time it afterward. That which gets measured gets improved. You saw me do a shitty little standing broad jump. And by shitty little, I mean, actually I was pretty pleased with that. When I was lighter in college, I want to say my best standing broad jump was like 11'6". That one measured out to be 10'9" or 10'10". I would have to go back and look at my notes. And that's on pretty shot legs from leg day just the other day. So hopefully that means maybe if I attempt it not on shot legs, I can start to get close to my college number. I've never really trained jumping as a direct thing. So for someone that doesn't train it, I've always been pretty good at it. Like when I weighed like 220, 230 in college, I had a 38-inch standing vert, mostly just from being kind of naturally explosive, comboed with squatting all the time. Safe to say I've gotten fucking fat and that's gone down. But the reason this became a video, fuck the broad jump, who cares about a broad jump? Huge improvement on my yoke. I've been making really good progress on it. I'm over the moon. Made some adjustments to how I brace, where I instead of having upward pressure on the yoke when I get my air, I actually drop a little further below it to create more room for the air, pull in that little bit extra air I get, and then I push up into the yoke and it compresses that air, creates more intra-abdominal pressure. I'm not saying that would work for anyone other than me, but that's what I've been doing. And it's led to my light yokes being about the same speed, my heavy yokes being substantially more stable. Legs are shot, which always makes a huge difference on yoke. That's why every time I've had one in a competition, I surprised myself because I didn't think about the fact that every single time I train yoke, it's been less than 48 hours since I did a heavy leg day. And then when I do my deload week, yokes move surprisingly fast. So this actually beats what I've done on fresh legs, on shot legs pretty substantially. So that was 865 for 25 feet in like 4.9 seconds. Who knows what that means? Usually you want to carry for like a 50-foot distance because that's more common to come up in comps. 25 is what I got in the driveway, so I've got a really good start most of the time. My acceleration phase is pretty snappy, and then I get into like the top speed coasting phase, and I'm fucking dog shit at it because I don't train it. This winter, once it's real snowy and cold and windy outside, I'll make the drive into town so I have access to their 50-foot run. So that'll be kind of like some periodization built into the year. Weather here in Montana gets pretty fucking brutal. So yeah, half the year I'll be doing a 50-foot run indoors. Half the year I'll be doing a 25-foot run. I've got like time parameters. As long as I crack that time parameter, I go up in weight. That time parameter is periodized alongside my weights. For those of you who know what that means and care, just I'm not carrying the same heavy weight every week. That's all that really means. And one thing that's interesting about Strongman is you don't really know what you're good at until you compete. You don't really know under your circumstances on your yoke, is this time good? I don't know until I show up to a competition, kind of see what local level looks like. You know, the first show I did, it was kind of interesting. Like, okay, I am pretty good at overhead events. I'm pretty good at deadlift, pretty good at XYZ. I'm barely ahead of the local level at that first show on yoke, despite being like statically pretty significantly the strongest guy there. Okay, that means I kind of need to work on this year round. And I've kind of kept yoke in the background anytime I wasn't prepping for anything specific. And over the last, gosh, I don't know, 2-3 months, I don't think I've gone a week without hitting some kind of time protocol PR on my yoke. Like, it's beginner gains because I've got this big static base and I'm undertrained on the yoke. So it's not that I'm doing I'm batting it out of the park, but it's nice to enjoy something novel being easy, like it was when I was newer to lifting on like the barbell lifts, for example, where it's like, yeah, if I cross my T's and dot my I's, I can kind of expect at least a marginal increase every single week. So that's been fucking sick. And dare I say, I'm getting close to not being a bad yoke runner. Hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, this progression continues to where I can call myself a good yoke runner. We'll see. Might film a little bit of the other stuff. I might not. I just kind of want to finish this session. It's dragged on a little longer than I want. But to clue you in on what I do on this day, I've got a little bit of sandbags. So the primary goal of this session is a moving event, generally yoke, as that's something I need work on. A loading event, usually sandbags, because that's what I have. Grip, behind the back holds are kind of my go-to in the off season. And then I do calves and tibs, tib hands, tibialis anterior muscle in front of your shin at the very end. 50% because I've got very big legs and small calves, and that makes me existentially uncomfortable. And 50% because I've got tiny little bitch ankles, and if I don't do direct training of the muscles around them, just doing yoke and rucks isn't enough for those muscles to be prepared. I get pretty significant shin splints. If we want to get into like mechanistics, sorry, camera ran out of battery. Yeah, I've got tiny little bitch ankles. I need to train the muscles around them on top of the specific training to avoid getting shin splints. Could potentially be my tib post being a little weak, but who cares? I just need to do kind of fundamental lower leg training, which is some kind of ankle dorsiflexion and some kind of plantar flexion. So toes go up, toes go down against weight, progress it with time, and that's enough to keep my shins in kind of good spec. Today, being a little bit of a jump from last week, I could feel my shins. We'll see how they feel tomorrow, but I could feel them on the set. All that means is I just need to keep going with the things that have brought me some success so far. Also, speaking of training accommodations for my below average little joints, I tend to have a good bit of issues with my wrist when push pressing, as the weight sits a little bit further back in my hand than when I bench press. When I bench press, my wrist is slightly cocked back, but the bar goes very low in the palm, right where it's kind of above my ulna. So if we think about it from like a lever perspective, there's no torque going on at my wrist because the lever arm is zero. It's directly above the joint, which is why I can bench press really heavy with no wrist wraps on and not really feel anything. I dig it nice and low in my palm to where I could bench it with my hands open. It just settles low, and it's not, I don't have to stabilize it. It's sitting in a balanced position, and then I lock in my fingers to stabilize that balanced position with it sitting very much on the kind of my outer lower palm. And that's what, like, you know, I got my wrists a little bit stronger for the 600 bench, but I bench 600 without outstandingly good wrist strength because I wasn't really calling on it. I do a lot of my warm-ups with my hands open to kind of double check my position. Switch over to push press where that weight sits a little further back, and my wrists fucking hurt. So just like how I had to fix up my ankles with just some bare bones, meat and potatoes, toes go up against weight, toes go down against weight. Not that many sets per week, just progressing them because it's easy to progress. It's a novel stimulus. It's not something I'm well trained in. It's something I'm a complete noob in. Much the same, kind of taking the same philosophy and applying it to my forearm, meat and potatoes forearm training, some this way, some this way. I was giving wrist curls a go for a while. Wasn't really my cup of tea. Couldn't quite get a good feel for them. Tried a bunch of different variations, tried doing the way different people set them up. And I just never felt like it was quite clicking for me. So what I bought was a rack mounted wrist roller and a loading pin from good old Bells of Steel. If you guys want to send me free stuff, I am always interested. But I bought that just because I like the rack mounted one. I tend to cheat the wrist roller loading pin, so it's got infinite loading potential. I can just overload with time. Just kind of simple meat and potatoes. I can count reps, I can count sets, I can progressively overload it, and I can kind of increase the durability in that area. Because generally speaking, when the muscles surrounding a joint are strong in a variety of positions, that joint tends to feel pretty good. When the surrounding muscles are just barely strong enough for the task we're asking them to do, that joint tends to take a bit of a beating, right? If our quads are just barely strong enough to hold us up on the yoke, we tend to have achy knees, right? Whereas if we have a little bit of a surplus of quad strength and a greater range of motion, we tend to be the kind of athlete that's knees don't get beat up quite as much by the yoke. So on and so forth. If we have a little bit of a surplus of tricep development, we tend to be the guy whose elbows you never feel it on the bench press. If your triceps are just barely strong enough to bench what you bench, the elbows might hurt a little bit. And following that central philosophy of mine, my forearms are barely strong enough to kind of support the weights I'm putting over my head. Let's get to a surplus, and hopefully that shit stops hurting. All right, I talked myself into it. I've got my behind the back holds. I'm supersetting them with some wrist roller extensions. So the one where you're pulling back towards you. Third set here. I'm not going to bore you with all 3 sets of the behind the back holds. Not got too heavy yet. If you would like to try them for yourself, pick it up off the rack like I'm doing. Spare yourself some axial fatigue. I prefer a power bar. It's a little thicker. It's a little harder than doing it on a deadlift bar. And also, if your bar is bent, it becomes drastically easier. Still works, but it's not quite the same. I know at my best, I did 2 rounds of 30 seconds at 4 plates on a power bar. I want to say Big Laws says that when he was in he knew his grip was in shape when he was between like 200 kilos and 210 kilos. So around 440 to 463-ish, if my conversion is right there, somewhere in that range for straight 30s. So I would represent pretty good grip strength. That would be like more world-class grip strength. A lot of my athletes kind of anywhere from 2 plates for rounds of these up to 4 plates for rounds of these. They're kind of my general off-season proxy for grip. I just like them. Bar tries to roll your hand open. You can't post it on your thighs like you can with a in-front one. So I've already done my first 2 rounds of 30 seconds. We're just at 3 plates today. We're kind of easing back into these. Final set, I might just fight it out to 40 seconds, do something a little hard because it's a little boring, but I'm following the plan, letting the weights ramp up a little bit more gradually like I'm supposed to at the beginning of a training cycle. Might hold on to this one a little bit longer, might not. We shall see. But 3rd round of 30 seconds here at 3 plates, and then I'm gonna hit my last round of the wrist roller extensions. So as you can see, I put a little timer down on the ground in front of me so I can watch it. Historically, I used my phone for this. Nowadays, I use this little timer thing that I can tap with my foot. That way I know how long I'm going. When I get into more difficult, like maybe top set back offs on these rather than the straight sets approach, my goal is just to keep fighting the weight for as long as possible and let it open my hand all the way, but not ever give up on the weight, just keep holding. In this case, 30 seconds is done. I believe, no, this is my 3rd week. I was gonna say next week we'll be going to kind of more all-out sets, going to grip failure, but we have 1 more week of these kind of sub-max sets. I just thought about it. Someone might be wondering why bother doing these sub-maximal grip sets at the beginning? Why not just start training to failure? Ignore this truck. There's not a tremendous amount of systemic fatigue associated with grip in this case. Why not? And the answer is mostly just I've found when I push grip to failure too many consecutive weeks, I start getting just a little bit of tendonitis in my forearm. So when I'm in my early blocks, that's my opportunity for that little reset. If you don't have that problem, yeah, a guy who pushes his grip to failure once a week, every week, is gonna be a guy with pretty strong grip. A lot of the best grip guys just build in grip failure to their training, right? They'll do 1 set of their rows with a fat grip or something double overhand, or 1 set of their dumbbell rows without a thing, hanging leg raises without straps. And that way they reach grip failure basically every training session as long as they're able to recover from it, which is an if. Some guys get a lot of tendonitis in their hands and their forearms, some don't. But grip is a little bit more of a neural quality. There are guys with huge forearms and suspect grip, and there are guys with not huge forearms and unbelievable grip. Hand size being a bit of a confounding factor there, but if you told me, hey Sam, this is a very neural kind of task, how would you train for it? Usually I lean into frequency and intensity and limit volume when neural adaptation is like maximal neural motor recruitment is the outcome, bearing fatigue is managed. So the strongest I ever got my grip, when I need to get my grip up, I was doing 1 set of something every day. One day I would be a more rigorous workout where I would do more than 1 set, but every training day I would take my grip to or near kind of mechanical grip failure for a shorter duration hold. I was able to recover from that just fine. That's the big caveat. And I got very, very strong in my grip for that period of time. And that's probably something I'll keep in kind of my back pocket for if I ever have a very rigorous grip show coming up, especially because of my little bitch mitts. Okay, I checked the program. I actually do have something kind of interesting to show you guys. We have 1 final hold with fat grips on the bar. Saw a bunch of people recommend doing something with a thicker bar where you take your thumb away from the center line a little bit. This was especially helpful for me because my thumbless grip numbers and my numbers with thumb around were getting a little bit scarily close. So I wasn't actually getting anything out of, I wasn't getting a little bit, but I wasn't getting as much as I should out of squeezing my thumb into the far side of my fingers. Because grip is about creating an environment of as much friction as possible, right? It's the same reason that people who are really interested in grip, like Brian Shaw, they dunk their hands in the chalk bowl to create like friction between the fingers, right? The more we can create friction in that environment, the better off we're going to be. And I was not creating as much with my thumb as I could, right? I also think for some guys who are getting good use of their thumb, for lack of a better term, doing a thumbless back off is something that I'll often give people, or the fat grip back off. Axle works really, really well for these, but I don't want to set up a separate thing. So we are just tossing on the fat grips for ease. My best all time looking at the PR board is something in the ballpark of 245 for 30 seconds. I'm sure there's some of you who can beat that. Grip is the one that's super interesting at local contests. There'll be a guy who's brand new to the sport who will just come and like place first in the grip event. If you've got big hands and you've been working with them, so you've got that kind of base neural efficiency, you can be really good at grip really fast. It's like how Hafthor's dad competes with him on grip events. Especially because skinnier hands, again, give you more friction, more surface area on the bar. You can wrap more around, i.e. Mark Felix. Grip is something that if you've got the right parameters, you can excel at quickly. I don't have the right parameters, so we're working this shit every week for a long time to get acceptably good. Like I said, 245, 30 seconds is an all-time best. I am not at that level yet. If I can go north of 30 seconds here, it will be an improvement from last week, which is all I'm looking for. That's all training is looking for those. We've got pushes, we've got pulls, you know, we push our calories up, we pull our calories down, and we're just trying to look for, whenever we can, an improvement from last week. We can zoom out and do mesocycles and all that stuff becomes necessary as we get better, but still at its core, it just comes down to setting a marker and trying to exceed that marker the next week. We can get clever with what markers, what goals we set, right? So it's like once we do 8s for a while, and once we can't beat our 8s, instead of just banging our head against that wall of 8s, we phase potentiate, and we move to 5s, and then we move to 3s, and by the time the 3s get stagnant, we go back to the 8s. And then hopefully we can, again, add weight, add performance each week, and then exceed what we got to last time we ran through 8s. We can periodize our goal setting, but it still comes down to week-to-week improvements is all we're chasing. You can't be upset when you do the first week of 8s after the 3s. You're not going to be at all-time 8s. It's not because you got weaker. It's because you get good at what you practice. You've been practicing 3s. You need a few weeks to get to all-time level on the 8s. Yada, 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 right? I have a scheme similar to that for my grip, where it's like, I need to be better this week 6 than last week 6. I'm not on week 6, but whatever, right? Hey, let's see if we can get north of 30 seconds. Bro will quit yapping. All right. Is that in frame? Yeah, it's probably in frame. That's why I love the GoPro as much as it looks worse than my good camera. It's so wide frame. I take up less space at the gym, which is so nice. I can just put it like kind of right next to me and not have like an alleyway that people are hesitant to walk across. But B, I can just aim it in like the vague direction and I'm certainly in frame. All right, let's give this a go. North of 30. Squeeze, knuckles down. So pointing my knuckles down, kind of twisting my hands in like an external rotation type fashion, squeezing in with the thumb, squeezing, not just holding as much as I need to, so kind of putting maximal intent into not letting my positions degrade, fighting early with the weight, rather than kind of passively hanging on to it, and letting, because it gets really hard as soon as you give away real estate, you're not getting that real estate back, so you gotta fight to keep it. Let's go, 30 seconds, come on. All right, 41, improvement from last week. That's all we could ask for. The hidden downside to the fisheye on the GoPro is every time I switch back to filming training, we used to do it with Kirsten's iPhone. The Jelly Star does not quite work for this, but her phone is now old and very slow. So we might buy a new one because she's gonna be helping me with videos more often. New phones have decent mics, decent cameras. Could just be an easy way to get more videos out for you guys. Or we might make a dedicated phone and get a nice mic for it when it's more convenient to use that than the nice camera we have, and we'll get a good mic for the camera, blah, blah, blah. The one downside to the GoPro is every time I switch back from filming with the GoPro over to the good camera, everybody's like, dude, have you bulked up? You look way bigger. It's because the fisheye does me so fucking dirty. Because I don't think I look like I weigh 260 in general, but I certainly don't look like I weigh 260. At least not a good 260 when it comes to the GoPro. So hopefully that's misleading, and what I see in the mirror is actually more accurate, because I watch back the GoPro videos like, fuck, I am so small. Holy shit. Crazy waist to limb ratio, eh? All right, I was just watching one of the Luke Stoltman's new video. He's coached by Strongman, who's a very good strongman coach, kind of atypical strongman training. So it's very cool to see what they do, because you could usually guess some of the rationale. Some of it's a little bit out of the box, out of the ordinary. Hey, Odie, come back here. Come here, handsome. Poor Odie got attacked this morning. He was out on his walk, and the wind blew open our neighbor's gate, and the dog came out and attacked him. He got split open. I'm not going to show it, but he got split open pretty good below his eye. His neighbor was super apologetic. Not a big deal at all, but quite the dramatic morning for Odie. He's a trooper though. He forgot about it, and we continued our walk. He had a good time, chased some birds, came back. We played tug of war. Not so traumatized. He forgot it happened, but then he really did not like when I had to clean it out and I had to put some antibiotic on it. He didn't like that part. That was worse than the actual getting mobbed part. Odie gets his ass beat at the dog park. Odie got his ass beat by a deer in our backyard one time. Carson had to scare off the deer because Odie was just going to get himself clobbered. Odie does not win fights. Never has, never will, even though he's fucking 120 pounds. But he's too sweet for his own good. He never defends, like he barely defends himself with like a snarl and then just gets his ass beat and never bites back. He must be very annoying to other dogs, though, because he gets attacked weirdly often. Aside from that, also, comment, Lou, go to the gym. L-O-U. Tell him to go to the gym. I'm trying some peer pressure tactics. Lou's a guy at the gym here. I like Lou, but he is, god damn, is that kid scatterbrained. Tell him to get to the gym. So I'm trying to think. I watched a video. I think I was starting saying this earlier and I trailed off. Watched Luke Stoltman's video with his coach, Shane Germain. And they do so much kind of interesting stuff that it's very interesting to look and see kind of the rationale, even though I think the video has a lot less mainstream appeal. And I was watching it, I was enjoying it. I was like, man, I'm a dickhead because I've been refusing to make this kind of video, even though I should be making videos for the people that enjoy shit like I enjoy shit. So stuff I did today. Dynamic upper body warm-up series, so arm swings, some trunk rotations, and then I did a couple reps of like kind of an ATG split squat, but the real emphasis is on driving that back hip into extension. As guys get bigger and bigger quads, it's very common to lose that extension at the hip, which makes moving events kind of clunky, makes my back feel kind of like shit. So I'm always building in things to kind of preserve that kind of hip extension. Today, it's a little bit of a dynamic, couple sets, couple reps of just a really deep lunge where I'm trying to drive that back knee as far behind my pelvis as possible without letting my pelvis kind of tilt forward to accommodate it. Feels really good, makes my yoke feel better. And then after that, I do some very basic like core warm-ups, front planks, bird dogs, some shit to get my glutes firing. We can get into that whole thing. Of course they're firing. I wouldn't be standing upright if they weren't firing, blah, blah, blah. Bromley's got some good videos on this where it's like, yeah, sure, glutes are off. Gluteal amnesia probably was a little bit of dramatic statement. But if you told me like, hey, Sam, you could be using your triceps more efficiently in your bench press, I would believe you in a heartbeat. That makes perfect sense. I've seen it. We can position ourselves to use something more efficiently or less efficiently. If you wanted to say that doing some low scale tricep work beforehand and getting a light pump, getting a good mind muscle connection would help me utilize my triceps more effectively, I would say, sure, that makes sense. Sure, the phrasing your triceps are off. They were not off on the first press, of course not. But I do find doing some low scale glute stuff helps me incorporate my glutes into my kind of driving forward, my acceleration phase a little bit more. Low scale stuff at the beginning, get a little bit of a pump, a little bit better mind muscle connection, tends to improve my mechanics on the yoke. So for lack of a better term, we activate the old glutes, get my adductors warm, because I find I do my best yoke when my strides are narrow. So I just kind of do some stuff where I'm really squeezing my adductor in, like Copenhagen planks, warmed up with some broad jumps to kind of get schmoving, get firing, and then we got under the yoke. So that was what you didn't see there. Did some conditioning sandbag, which was just like max work with 6 minutes on the clock. Most bag extensions I could do. Really just conditioning there. Then we did grip, you saw that. Did my wrist roller, you saw that. And then here is the setup I use for my calf raises. Been liking it, works pretty good. Do some tib raises, call it a day. But this whole workout is a giant superset with taking plates off of the fucking yoke so I can put it back inside. All right, we have consulted the logbook. 10 would be solid, 12 would be very good here.